You were given a gift, perfect, unending stillness. The elder ones arrived in ships like polished river stones. They did not conquer. They did not command. They simply healed. They ended your petty wars overnight. They erased famine and disease. They smoothed the jagged edges of your world. They gave you forever. A life without end. A body that would not fail. A world without pain. But a long life without purpose is a cage. You stand on your balcony overlooking a perfect city. The architecture flows like liquid light. The sky is a flawless, curated blue. No one rushes. No one argues. No one even raises their voice. There is no need. Everything is provided. Everything is managed. Everything is still. For the first century, it was paradise, a gift beyond your wildest dreams. You watched generations live and not die. Then the silence began to weigh on you. It started as a faint pressure behind your eyes, a feeling that something vital was missing. You have forever to do anything you want. Yet there is nothing that needs doing. Art has no struggle to capture. Science has no mysteries left to solve. The elder ones, your gentle shepherds, solved them all. They gave you a garden. You are the prize flowers, beautiful and unchanging, and utterly, perfectly trapped. You look at your hands. They are unscarred. They are strong and youthful, as they will be forever. They have never known desperation. They have never built something from nothing. They have never fought for survival. They have only ever received. You close them into fists. It is a gesture you have not made in a long, long time. The feeling is alien. It is a spark in the endless calm, a memory of something wild. You felt the quiet scream under the calm. It was in the eyes of your neighbors. You saw it in the faces on the public transit ways. A profound, bottomless boredom. A universe without struggle had no meaning. The shepherds gave you everything, and in doing so, they took everything that mattered. Ambition was a disease they had cured. Passion was a fever they had cooled. Even love felt muted, a pleasant, stable companionship. You began to walk instead of ride. You explored the quiet corners of your perfect world. You sought out places where the shepherd's polish had not quite reached. An old park with overgrown, untamed weeds. A shoreline where the waves still crashed with a hint of violence. These places were rare. The shepherds were excellent gardeners. They pruned away anything that felt too real, too chaotic. You saw a child fall in the park one day, a scraped knee, a moment of surprise. Before a single tear could fall, a shepherd drone was there, a tiny, silent disk of silver. It bathed the knee in a soft green light. The skin mended instantly. The child stared at the perfect, unbroken skin. There was no pain, no lesson learned. The drone hovered for a moment, then it zipped away. The child did not laugh or cry. They simply stood up and walked on. That image haunted you. The erasure of a tiny, harmless wound. The denial of a single tear. You understood then. It was not malice. It was their nature. The elder. One saw all struggle as a flaw, a bug in the code of existence. They were fixing the universe. But you were beginning to suspect they were breaking it. The quiet scream grew louder in your mind. A universe without a single scraped knee was not a universe you wanted. The urge for something real became an obsession. You started digging, not with a shovel, but with data. You searched the public archives, a sea of sanitized, shepherd-approved knowledge. History was a smooth, clean narrative, a story of a foolish, self-destructive species, a people who were mercifully saved from themselves. It was all true in a way. but it felt incomplete, like a book with the most exciting chapters torn out. You needed to go deeper, below the surface of the official network. The Shepherd system was perfect. It was seamless and unbreachable, or so everyone believed. But it was built on top of your old world, your messy, chaotic, human world. You had a hunch, a whisper of an idea. The Shepherds did not destroy information. They curated it. They pruned it. So what happened to the branches they cut away? You found it by accident. A maintenance schematic for an old geothermal plant, deep beneath the gleaming city. It showed a server room, one that was not on any modern map. A forgotten pocket of the old world. A place the gardeners had somehow missed. It took you weeks of careful planning. You had to bypass 1,000 gentle, watchful eyes. Security drones that saw you only as a citizen taking an unusual stroll. You never realized how boring you had to be to become invisible. The air in the old tunnel was stale and cold. It smelled of dust and rust, the perfume of decay. A scent you had not experienced in your entire long life. It was intoxicating. The door to the server room was heavy steel, not a shimmering energy field. You had to force it open with your own strength. Inside, humming softly, was a secret data cache. Rows of black, silent servers. They held the forbidden records. The chaotic, bloody, glorious past. You activated the old terminal. The screen flickered to life with a pixelated greeting. It was ancient technology. Clumsy, slow, and utterly beautiful. You bypassed the security with simple logic. The old humans were not expecting an enemy from the future. They were expecting one of their own. You opened the first file. Its title was simple: The Great Wars. It was not a curated summary. It was raw footage, unedited, unfiltered. You watched cities burn. You heard the sounds of weapons you could not name. You saw people, your ancestors, crying and fighting. They were terrified. They were desperate. They were bleeding. And they were more alive than anyone you had ever known. We studied the forbidden histories of old Earth. Not just you anymore. You shared your discovery with a few trusted friends. Those who shared your disquiet. Those with that same hollow look in their eyes. Together, you watched them. The forgotten ones. You saw them invent. You saw them explore. They launched fragile ships into the unforgiving void. They reached for their moon with trembling hands. They built empires that rose and fell like tides. They wrote poetry about heartbreak. They composed music filled with rage and joy. We learned that our ancestors had truly lived. Their lives were short, brutal, often tragic, but they were filled with a fire that had been extinguished in your time. You felt a phantom pain for them. You felt their losses, their triumphs. You began to understand the price of their lives and the cost of your own. The Shepherds had saved you from this pain, but they had also robbed you of the meaning it created. You were safe. You were immortal. And you were ghosts, haunted by the vibrant, bleeding memories of a species that dared to feel. Remembering was not enough. The history showed you a people who did things. They built. They broke. They tried again. The impulse was a long-dormant instinct. It woke inside you like a starved beast. You had to create something new, something unplanned by the Shepherds, something imperfect. The idea was terrifying and thrilling. It was the first truly new thought you had in a century. We started with the basics. The old files held schematics, blueprints for primitive machines, internal combustion engines. They were noisy, inefficient, and beautifully simple. We chose one, a small, rugged engine from an ancient vehicle. A jeep, the files called it. The name sounded wonderfully strange. We built it in secret, deep in the abandoned geothermal plant, the same place we found the cache, our hidden sanctuary of chaos. Gathering the materials was the hardest part. Everything in your world was smart matter, programmable, perfect. We needed dumb matter. Iron that would rust, copper that would tarnish. We scavenged from the deepest ruins. We melted down forgotten pipes. We hammered metal into shape with our own hands, our soft, uncalloused hands. They blistered. They bled. We learned the simple, honest pain of labor. It felt like coming home. After months of secret work, it was ready. It was a greasy, ugly thing, a collection of wires, pistons, and gears. It was the first new thing made by human hands in centuries. You connected the fuel line. You primed the ignition. With a shared, held breath, you threw the switch. It sputtered. It coughed black smoke. Then, with a deafening roar, it exploded into life. The sound was a violation, a glorious, defiant shout in the silent world. It was the most beautiful thing you had ever heard. The roar of the engine did not go unnoticed. It was too loud, too different. The shepherds came, not in warships. They did not have warships. They had gardeners. A single silver ship descended. It settled silently near the entrance to the old plant. 3 figures emerged. The elder ones. They were tall and slender, wrapped in robes of flowing light. Their faces were serene, impossible to read. They moved with a grace that was both beautiful and unsettling. They found you standing beside your creation. The engine was still rumbling, a heartbeat of defiance. One of the shepherds glided forward. It did not speak with a voice. Its thoughts simply appeared in your mind. Clear and calm. This is an error, an inefficiency. It creates disorder. It gestured with a long, elegant hand. Not at you, but at the engine. It did not see you as a threat. It saw your creation as a broken toy. They saw our creation not as a rebellion. They saw it as an error to be fixed. There is wasted energy here. The shepherd's thoughts continued. Uncontrolled combustion, unnecessary noise. We can help you perfect this. It was the most insulting thing you had ever heard. They thought you had failed to make a proper, silent, anti-gravity motor. They could not conceive that you had built this magnificent beast on purpose. They saw your first act of free will as a cry for help. A small drone detached from the shepherd's wrist. It floated toward the engine. It intended to dismantle it, to correct it, to erase your beautiful, imperfect machine. Someone from your group, you never knew who, threw a rock, a useless, primitive act. The rock bounced harmlessly off the shepherd's personal energy field. But the intent was clear. It was the first act of violence against them in known history. The shepherd paused. Its serene thoughts held a flicker of something new. Surprise. The shepherd's surprise was your only advantage. It retreated. Its silver ship ascended and vanished. But you knew they would be back. They would not return with anger. They would return with solutions. They would flood the area with calming energies. They would offer personalized therapy sessions. They would try to fix the trauma that made you build a noisy engine. They would smother your spark before it could become a fire. But the echo of that engine, that single act of defiance, had woken others. Others who had been waiting in the shadows. They found you, not through the networks, but through whispers, through secret signs you never knew existed. An old woman who ran a flower stall, a young man who maintained the water reclamation pipes. They were the keepers of a deeper secret. They were the ghosts of the forgotten war. They led you to a place far beyond the city, a place not even the old schematics showed. A hollowed-out asteroid, hidden in a stable orbit, disguised as a common chunk of rock. Inside was a hangar. It was vast, and it was filled with sleeping giants, warships, hulking, angular beasts of metal. They were scarred and ancient. Relics from the last, desperate war against the shepherds. The war your ancestors lost. These people had not accepted the peace. Their families had passed down the duty for centuries. They maintained the old ships. They preserved the old weapons, waiting for a sign, waiting for someone to break the perfect silence. Your noisy little engine was that sign. They showed you the ship's systems, the weapons arrays, the tactical displays. It was a legacy of violence, a terrible, necessary inheritance. Humanity had not gone to sleep so quietly, after all. You stood in the cockpit of a ghost ship. The air smelled of old ozone and cold metal. The technology was primitive compared to the shepherd's elegance, but it had teeth. It had a purpose beyond simple, placid existence. You had the ghost fleet. You had the forbidden knowledge, but you also had centuries of the shepherd's gifts. Their perfect materials, their flawless energy systems. An idea began to form. A dangerous, wonderful idea. We would not fight their way. We would not fight the old way. We would merge their perfection with our chaos. The plan was blasphemy. It was like scribbling on a masterpiece, or teaching a god how to swear. We started by taking apart the shepherd drones, the little silver discs that fixed scraped knees and pruned unruly thoughts. Their power sources were incredible, tiny, efficient, nearly limitless. We ripped those perfect hearts out. We tried to integrate them into the old ship's systems. The first attempts were disastrous. A power conduit overloaded and melted a bulkhead. A navigation system fried itself into a glowing brick. The shepherd's tech was not designed to cooperate. It was designed to dominate, to smooth out irregularities. It fought against the chaotic, jury-rigged nature of the old war ship. It was like trying to mix oil and fire. But then, you found the key. You did not try to control their technology. You had to corrupt it, seduce it. You introduced logical paradoxes into its operating system. You fed it the chaotic data from the old histories, the poems, the war cries, the irrational, beautiful noise of humanity. And slowly, something amazing happened. The two systems began to merge. The result was a hybrid, a beautiful and dangerously unpredictable machine. The ship's engines glowed with a new, unstable light. The hum of the ghost fleet began to change. Before you could finish your work, they came again. This time, it was different. No silver ship, no silent drones. An elder. One appeared alone. It materialized on the bridge of your flagship, not with force, but as a projection, a ghost of light and sorrow. It stood before you, its form shimmering. This was not a gardener coming to prune a weed. This was a diplomat or a judge. It did not use the simple, direct thoughts of the other shepherds. This one showed you things. It opened your mind to its own memory. It showed you visions of galaxies devoured by ambition. It showed you species like your own ancestors, full of fire and passion. They reached for the stars. They built empires. And they turned their genius toward creating weapons of unimaginable horror. They burned star systems. They shattered planets. They tore holes in the fabric of reality itself. You saw entire star-born civilizations reduced to screaming data. You witnessed races that had engineered themselves into biological nightmares, consuming everything in a mindless plague. Each one had started with a spark, A single, defiant act. A refusal to accept limits. A desire for something more. The Elder. One showed you the end result of every path but its own. An endless, echoing scream in a dead universe. Then, it showed you its own kind. The Elder Ones. They had been there. They had seen it all. They were the survivors of 1 billion galactic wars. They were not conquerors. They were librarians, trying to save the last books from a fire. They were doctors, trying to heal a self-harming patient. This is the fruit of chaos. Its thoughts echoed in your soul. A deep, ancient sadness. We offer peace. We offer survival. Why do you wish to burn? It was not a question. It was a plea. The vision faded. The Elder One's projection remained. Waiting, its silent plea hung in the air. You looked around the bridge, at the faces of your comrades, the ghosts of the old war, the new rebels awakened by an engine's roar. You saw the shepherd's logic. You felt its ancient sorrow. It was a compelling argument, a choice between a quiet garden and a burning inferno. Any sane person would choose the garden. But humanity was not always sane. You had seen your ancestors. They lived in a burning world. But they also loved in that world. They created. They dreamed. They reached for the heavens even as they fell. Their short, brutal lives had a meaning that your endless, perfect life lacked. To be human was to be a creature of beautiful, glorious, terrible flaws. To choose. To risk. To fail. You refused their gilded peace. You looked at the shimmering form of the Elder One, and for the first time, you spoke back. Not with your mind, but with your voice. The words felt rusty, unused, but they were yours. You gave us a cage of comfort, you said. You call it peace. We call it oblivion. Your voice was steady. It echoed in the silent bridge. We sent our message, not just with words. We opened a channel across the entire system. We broadcast the raw files, the histories, the songs, the art, the declaration of a mad king from an ancient play, the final, desperate transmission of a dying pilot. We showed everyone what they had lost, what had been taken from them. We chose the right to choose our own path. We declared ourselves human again. The shimmering projection of the Elder One did not move, but you felt its sorrow deepen into something else. Resignation. The Elder One vanished. The system held its breath. The shepherds did not respond with force. Their silence was more unnerving than any attack. They were processing, trying to fit your declaration into their perfect logic. You knew you had a small window. A moment of confusion before the gardeners came back with a new, more effective way to prune. You had to make a statement they could not ignore, a gesture they could not correct. Our first move was not an attack. An attack was predictable. It was a variable they could calculate. We needed to do something impossible, something that broke the laws of their orderly universe. Our target was a specific point in space, a carefully chosen sector of empty darkness, far from any planet, far from any life. According to Shepherd star science, it was a zone of absolute stability, a place where a star could never form. Our fleet of hybrid ghost ships moved as one. We warped into the empty sector. The ship's new power cores whined. They strained under the corrupted Shepherd technology. On your command, they focused their energy, not as a weapon, but as a creative force. They poured raw energy into a single point in space, a torrent of power guided by human chaos and alien perfection. They were trying to force a star into existence. At first, nothing happened. The empty void simply swallowed the energy. The Shepherd's network probably flagged it as a massive, localized waste of power. An error. Then, the darkness began to shimmer. The fabric of space itself groaned under the strain. A point of light appeared. It flickered. It grew. It ignited. We created a star where one should not be. A brilliant, furious, blue-white sun. A wound in the perfect dark. It was a glorious, impossible sunrise. The birth of the impossible star sent a shock wave through the system, not a physical one, a logical one. Their perfect network could not understand our actions. Creating a star in a stable zone was not just improbable. It was a violation of their known physics. It was like a chess piece suddenly deciding to fly. The foundation of their silent empire began to crack. Their models failed. Their predictions collapsed. Across the human worlds, the Shepherd's control began to flicker. Drones froze mid-task. Public transitways slowed to a halt. The perfect blue skies stuttered, revealing the black void behind them for a second. The Shepherd's vast intelligence was consumed. It was trying to solve the riddle of the new star. It was a problem with no logical solution, because it was not an act of logic. It was an act of will. The effect on the human population was immediate. They had seen our broadcast. Now they saw the proof, the unblinking new star in their sky. A symbol of defiance. A new sun. The quiet scream beneath the surface of the Golden Age finally broke free. People poured into the streets, not in a riot, but in a daze of wonder. They looked up at the sky. They looked at each other. They started to talk, to laugh, to argue. The beautiful, messy noise of humanity returned. For the first time in centuries, a Shepherd drone was given an order it could not fulfill. A citizen asked it to play a chaotic song from the old world. The drone hovered, its light pulsing with confusion. It tried to access its approved music library, but its core programming was busy, arguing with itself about a star that shouldn't exist. The contagion of free will was spreading. We had not attacked their ships. We had attacked their certainty. The Shepherds were reeling. Their network was in disarray. Their perfect garden was suddenly filled with weeds. But we knew they would recover. Their logic would eventually adapt. They would quarantine the paradox. They would find a new way to enforce the stillness. We needed one final push, a move they could never undo. Our final gambit was not for destruction. It was for infection. We had one target left, the core of their network, not a physical place, but a nexus of data, a central hub through which all Shepherd consciousness flowed. It was the brain of their empire, protected by layers of impenetrable logic. You could not attack it with weapons. You could not breach it with code. It would see any attack coming light years away. So we did not send an attack. We sent a gift. Using our corrupted ships, we opened a massive data stream. We aimed it directly at their core consciousness. But we did not upload a virus. We did not upload a weapon. We uploaded us. We uploaded raw, unpredictable human art into their core. Every song, every poem, every painting from the secret cache. Thousands of years of human struggle and passion. The irrational joy of a love sonnet. The bleak despair of a funeral dirge. The chaotic fury of a rock anthem. We sent them the illogical, contradictory, and beautiful mess of the human soul. We sent them jokes with no punchline, stories with no moral, questions with no answer. It was a flood of pure, unfiltered chaos, a data stream of scraped knees and broken hearts, of senseless laughter and defiant hope. We planted the seed of human chaos at the very center of their perfect, logical mind. The effect was instantaneous and catastrophic. For them, the shepherd's collective consciousness could not process the art. It could not categorize the irrationality. How could a single species produce works of such profound love and such horrifying violence? How could a song be both sad and beautiful? What was the logical value of a joke? It was a paradox on a civilizational scale. Their perfect mind began to break. We saw it from our ships. The light of their vessels flickered erratically. Their silent, graceful formations broke apart. Some ships simply drifted. Others began to trace bizarre patterns in the void, like a mind lost in a fever dream. The shepherds were not dying. They were confused, overwhelmed by an emotion they had spent eons eradicating. They could not cure the chaos we had unleashed. It was now a part of them. And so, they made a choice. The only logical one left. They retreated. With a speed and coordination that was still breathtaking, they began to withdraw. Their ships vanished from orbit around our worlds. Their drones fell silent and dark. Their presence receded from the system like a great silver tide. But they did not leave us entirely. They built a wall. On the edge of our solar system, they constructed a barrier, a quarantine zone, not a physical wall of metal and energy, but a wall of distorted space-time, a shimmering, impassable boundary. It was their final act of gardening. They could not prune the weeds, so they built a fence around the overgrown patch. They walled us in and left us behind, to save the rest of the galaxy from our beautiful, terrible infection. We are alone now, in a silent system. The shepherd's wall shimmers at the edge of our perception, a constant reminder of our cage and our freedom. The cities are no longer perfect. The transitways break down. The sky is sometimes gray with unfiltered clouds. There is crime. There is argument. There is sickness. The old pains of humanity have returned, and we have welcomed them like long-lost friends. We are rediscovering ourselves. We are learning how to build again, how to govern, how to disagree without destroying each other. It is a hard and dangerous road. Some days, the silence of the shepherds feels like a tempting memory, the memory of a life without worry, a life without consequence. But then we look at the new star in our sky, the impossible star, our star. We have our freedom and all the danger it brings. We have the right to fail, the right to bleed, the right to reach for the stars and fall short. The ghost ships stand ready, not for war against the shepherds, but for a new journey, a journey into our own future. We are learning to be human again, with all the chaos, all the pain, and all the glory that comes with it. You stand on your balcony. It is the same balcony as before. But the city is different. It is alive with noise and light and imperfection. In the distance, you see smoke rising from a new factory, a factory you helped design. Your hands are no longer smooth. They are calloused. They bear the small scars of creation. You look up at the sky, at the two suns, the old, placid one, and the new, defiant one. And for the first time in a very long life, you feel a sense of peace, not the peace of stillness, but the peace of purpose. The terrible, glorious dawn has arrived.